We start off this edition of Fine Print with the latest from China, where a meeting of the Communist Party has been underway. A party which started with just 12 members in 1921 has 90 million members now and rules over 1.4 billion people. It commands and controls practically everything in China. With one supreme leader, Xi Jinping, the president of China since 2013, who is all set to rule for life. This crucial meeting in China is a part of that conclave which started on Monday. Nearly 400 members of the party's powerful Central Committee have gathered in Beijing to hold a meeting behind closed doors. Officially, it is the 6th session of the 19th Central Committee of the Communist Party, during which the 100-year-old ruling party will pass a rare and historic resolution which will pave the way for an unprecedented third term for President Xi Jinping. Apart from this, little is known about what exactly is going on in Beijing, but the outcome is not expected to bring good news to the region, the West, and especially to two former Chinese regions, Hong Kong and Taiwan. With tensions between Beijing and Taipei soaring to an all-time high, Taiwan carefully sits near the mouth of the dragon, trying to ally with the West the best that it can. The defense minister of Taiwan has been warning of Chinese acts of intimidation with military exercises. In the latest, the island's defense minister has once again sounded an alarm on China's capabilities of blocking major ports, airports, and cutting off key transportation links to the island. The self-governed democratic island lives under the constant threat of invasion by China. As China has already started its quest to rule Taiwan, it has launched a campaign of quote-unquote grey zone warfare. A warfare campaign of intimidating military exercises, patrols, surveillance that fall just short of armed conflict. This campaign is only intensifying, with China sending more warplanes into the airspace of Taiwan. A group of military strategists from around the world have come together to lay out a 6-phased attack plan of China. This attack plan is how the military strategists believe the struggle might play out. Before breaking down these phases, let's look at the demography of Taiwan. In the geographical unit, Taiwan has a group of outlying islands away from its mainland, with two of them extremely close to the Chinese mainland, Matsu Islands and the island of Kinmen, being the closest, making them the most vulnerable to Chinese aggression. Let's now break down the scenarios for you. First scenario, China decides to impose a blockade on Taiwan's Matsu Islands in a bid to increase pressure on Taipei to open talks on unification. The small island of over 13,000 people would hardly stand a chance to defend itself. Second, target the island of Kinmen, lying about 6 kilometers from the Chinese port city of Xiamen on the coast of Fujian province. It is home to about 140,000 people. The Chinese troops can easily take control of the airport and claim the island. Number 3, again, this is not a situation of an all-out war. It is China's bid to force the island's leadership to agree to talks. A vast fleet of PLA Navy, Coast Guard, maritime militia ships around Taiwan can enforce a quarantine. PLA fighters and air defense can take control of Taiwan's interceptors to lead China to act number 4 of enforced control with a massive military presence on water, air, and on the ground. The PLA troops can practically enforce control over Taiwanese customs, maritime and airspace. All these acts will undoubtedly invite Western retaliation, which will definitely not end with sanctions. Beijing will demand the international community to refrain from interfering in China's internal affairs and call on the Taiwanese authorities to avert a looming global crisis and open immediate talks on unification. And if it does not agree, Beijing will launch a missile campaign. This according to the military strategists. The PLA's goal is to overwhelm the island before the United States and its allies can even respond. However, amid a global outcry over massive casualties and approaching Western warships, the only way to exert control is an all-out invasion. Once again, these scenarios are, by their very nature, speculative. They are not predictions of events to come. This report examines the possible conflict scenarios as laid out by global military strategists. And with us on the broadcast from Taipei is Brian Hu, who is the founding editor of New Bloom magazine. Thanks very much, Brian, for being here with us. What do you make of these scenarios that have been laid out and overall the pressure tactics that China has been resorting to, including record Chinese incursions into Taiwan's air defense zone?
Thanks for having me. So yeah, I mean, the Reuters report was discussed in Taiwan regarding these various scenarios it offered. I think what is key to note is that much of the scenarios, which are, again, hypothetical, downplay Taiwanese resistance. For example, Taiwan has the capacity to hit targets on the Chinese mainland. And so that is a deterrent from an invasion, for example. Some of these strategies regarding just blockades or conducting limited assaults, these are possibilities that the Taiwanese military has thought about for decades. And so it is a very much doom and gloom scenario. What is quite interesting, though, is that the possibility of China taking limited action against Taiwan, this was something the report did consider, that they would not launch a full-scale invasion of Taiwan, which would be costly in terms of human lives. They don't have the lift capacity to do this, to transport enough troops over to maintain a long-term occupation of Taiwan, so they might take some of Taiwan's outlying islands instead. But then that also has to factor out certain scenarios. For example, economic sanctions, the fact that Taiwan produces half the world's semiconductors. China's semiconductor manufacturing is also dependent on Taiwan. So what if that limited invasion led to Taiwan cutting off semiconductor supplies? That's not discussed as much. But I think it's right to be concerned because of the fact that there are these military threats now directed towards Taiwan, and they're increasing.
Right. Let's talk about how China has also been doing its best to raise tensions with India. It has even built mock US warships to practice attacking them. With a third term certain for Xi Jinping, should the world expect more of the same from China, a regime that will continue to provoke the world militarily?
That's a very good question. I think it could actually go both ways. For example, what is interesting is that to expand his powers, to become a leader on par with Mao or Deng, Xi had to remove the term limits that a Chinese president could serve. Limited to 2 term limits now, it looks like he's going to go for 3. And playing up something like Hong Kong, for example, or Xinjiang as crises is a way to justify this power grab. Because of the fact that after Deng, the Chinese Communist Party instituted safeguards to try to prevent there from being another leader such as Mao or Deng that had unsurmounted, unchecked control. So having these crises is a way to justify that. And so one argument then is that if he has a third term, he doesn't need these crises. He does not need to ramp up tensions with India or Taiwan. However, the other scenario is that he will then look to cement his legacy as a Chinese leader, similar to Mao or Deng, someone on the same scale. And so expanding China's borders or, for example, taking Taiwan, having a historical accomplishment that Chinese leaders before him did not have, that's something that he might push for all the more.
Brian, thanks very much once again for sharing those perspectives. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.